Welcome to our weekly webinar today. You know, as I sat down to prepare this, I thought to myself, why during these times of uncertainty, chaos, and fear that we're in right now, do we really desire more transparency, right? And it boils down to the fact that our brains really desire higher levels of clarity. We want to understand, we want to have more answers, especially when things are so uncertain, so unclear. And so that's why this topic today is so important in today's landscape. When you think of COVID-19, you think of the situation we're in, right? It doesn't matter if it's health that we're worried about, whether it's our health or our family members' health. It could be financial security, right? Look at the economy. Look at job security going on right now for people. Even losing your home, the health, the wellness of our families, etc. Everything is going on right now, and we're in such a time of uncertainty where we aren't always sure what's going on. And so that's what the power of transparency is going to all be about. It's all about how do we create that transparency that we need? Because the truth is, right now, we may not have all the tools that we need to really navigate these uncertain times, whether that be as a leader, an employee, a community member, just a family member, a loved one, a friend. We have to have new tools to really handle these situations we haven't been in before. And so I always tell people that we go to school for so many years, and what we learn in school is a lot about grammar, punctuation, but who really teaches us how to handle uncertainty, how to handle fear and chaos and change? Well, that's what today's webinar is all about. It's designed to just give you one skill set that's all about transparency and 3 proven techniques that you can use to really implement that, no matter which aspect of your life you're interested in. Whether that's as a leader, an employee, family member, a community member, we're going to learn these skills. And so this really is called the power of transparency in a time of uncertainty. And so we're really going to be focused on transparency. And it's going to come in 3 different pieces here. The first, we're actually going to talk about how to maintain a 2-way communication channel. Now, I know that seems simple and everything, but in times of uncertainty, you're going to find out as we go through this that 2-way communication actually gets kind of tricky because we're all kind of in a survival mode. And so learning ways to make it a full 2-way, because a lot of times we're talking at people or being talked at during times of this fear and uncertainty. So we're going to really work on that. The second one we're going to focus on is taking ownership and reinforcing accountability. Now, this is a tricky one during this type of time, but you're going to learn a little bit about what taking ownership really means in terms of transparency, as well as what does reinforcing accountability during these times of uncertainty, during times where everyone's working from home, has their family members at home, are trying to provide their children with education at the same time of doing their job. How do we reinforce the accountability at that level? And the last really good technique we're going to learn is how to not only give support, but also receive it. Now, there's a reason it's called give and receive support. We're great as humans at giving support. We're always there to help other people, but how good are we at receiving support? We're going to talk about that. So let's start out here in step number 1, which is maintain a 2-way communication channel. Now, as I said, that seems really simple, right? Because communication happens between 2 people. There's a speaker and there is a listener. And immediately we think, okay, we're good. I'm going to speak at the person, they're going to listen. But in order to actually create 2-way communication, we have to learn a new way to look at that during these times of uncertainty. So a lot of times the reason we don't have this 2-way communication during these times is very simple. Oftentimes we feel in a rush. Think about if maybe you're a supervisor right now or an employee, and it always feels like you're trying to catch up with what's the newest thing you're trying to do as a company. What are we trying to do for our employees? What project are we actually focusing on? Well, we always feel like we're just in a rush, or truthfully, sometimes we just don't know what we're supposed to say. How often as a company, as a family member, do you really kind of not know the answer, right? It's uncertain. And so we get uncomfortable in that. And so there's so many reasons why we actually get in this state of struggling for 2-way communication, especially during uncertainty. So we're going to focus on 3 areas. We're going to focus on leadership, workplace scenarios, and kind of our family life. And so we're going to provide a coaching tip for each. And the first is I'm going to talk about on a leadership style. What is some of our coaching tips? Now, this is important to say. Leadership does not mean that your title says CEO, director, manager. No. Leadership is about the way you carry yourself, the way you are with your teams, your peers, your family members, your community. So we're going to talk about that. So the first one we're going to talk about is leader. And so what we talk about with maintaining a two-way channel of communication is very simple. And that's that we actually have to provide an avenue for that two-way communication. Provide an avenue for your employee or your family members to come talk to you. What that means is it can't just be the same old, remember the open door policy, right? I always have an open door. Well, that's not working right now. Everyone's working from home. So we have to be very creative and actually give people an idea of how are we extending this two-way communication. So a couple techniques we've been talking about have been maybe an open Zoom policy. And what that would look like is maybe 1 hour out of your day, you open up a Zoom link, right? Or a FaceTime or GoToMeeting or Skype, whatever it is you're using. And you share that link with your team, your employees, somebody like that. And you say, I'm available for the next hour. Anyone who needs anything, jump on, let's talk. And actually you have to tell the people how to talk to you during these times of uncertainty. We're in a state of fear, so we aren't sure what to do. So actually setting that space. Another one might be actually setting aside weekly meetings. Actually setting aside a space that says this is not to handle projects. This is not to handle this. It's just to handle, hey, we're going through a really hard time here as a team. What does anyone need? And providing that space, that avenue for the two-way communication. Now, that's as a leader, right? You have the ability to set those up. Think about yourself as just simply an employee, right? You may not have the ability to say, hey, I'm going to implement all these systems. So what can an employee do to really create two-way communication? And that is that you have to give yourself permission. Okay, and this is powerful. Give yourself permission as the employee to provide feedback, to share your thoughts, to use your voice during times of uncertainty. We are all in a state of fear, and sometimes we just want to quiver back and we just want to stay in our shell. But the truth is, to create two-way communication, we have to have the permission, the courage to give feedback to somebody, to kind of challenge in a very respectful way, hey, have we thought about doing this differently? And really using our voice. And the last one we want to talk about is as a family member, as a loved one. What are some ways to do this? And so when you think of creating a two-way channel, okay, one of the things I always hear is, how do you do that with your child, right? Well, first and foremost, we have to believe that our child has things to bring to the table, that we're not always the one who has to tell them everything. So actually sitting down with your students, your kids, your family member, and having a conversation about how do we have a two-way communication channel. Encourage your children to actually participate in a family discussion or decision or what's going on right now. Because what it does is it brings them as part of the group and creates a system where they feel they can speak up, they can share with you what's going on. And so when you think about it, that is two-way communication. How do we implement that? And so our exercise here for you today is very simple. I want you to identify one relationship. That could be a work colleague, it could be a direct report, it could be a family member. And we always say, pick something easy to start with. And all I want you to do is look at that relationship, determine one new avenue of two-way communication. It could be as simple as, hey, we're just going to speak with my spouse every night for 10 minutes, and we're just going to talk about how are we doing? What is going on in this time, and how can we be there for each other? Maybe it's with a work colleague, and all you're going to do is say, hey, we haven't been able to communicate as much. Let's spend 15 minutes just talking about things on the phone. So I want you to actually determine it, and I want you to talk with that person. Share with them, this is the channel we want to implement, put the system together, and follow through with it. And look at, how do we get that communication? Are my people able to come to me, share things with me? And are we able to build a deeper relationship during even this really difficult time? So that's a little bit about two-way communication. And what it really is, two-way communication is about communicating. And it's about not just giving information, but receiving and listening. The next technique we really want to focus on is take ownership and reinforce accountability. Now, I want you to think about this. If you're running 15 minutes late to the hairdresser, Do you usually spend most of your ride thinking about, okay, what am I going to tell them is my reason for being late? Yeah, that's what we're always doing. But the truth is that people don't really care about our reason or our excuse. No, they just want us to take ownership and do something differently next time. And so what I tell people is just imagine if the next time that you didn't finish your project, and I want to think about it in a time like this, with a COVID-19 environment, right? And you're home and you have 3 kids that you're dealing with while trying to work online. I want you to think about when you haven't finished something, people don't, it's okay about this, and this. They just want to know, I haven't done this yet. I'm going to put it at the top of my list and I'm going to get it to you by blank. So whether that's, oh, I'm going to be able to get it to you in 15 minutes. I totally forgot about it. Or it's going to be, oh, I'm not going to be able to get to that until tomorrow. But set yourself a timeline and accomplish it and take ownership of not getting that done. And so during these times of uncertainty and fear and chaos, we go into a survival mode. We want to protect ourselves. So we want to give reasons and quote unquote excuses to why we can't accomplish things because it helps our ego. It makes us feel safer. But the truth is that transparency is about letting our mistakes understand that those are really just a learning, a growth. And so that's what we're going to talk about here with taking ownership. And so what I want to think about is, think about a leader, right? Again, like I said, leader is in all aspects. A leader, what our coaching tip to you would be is have the ego strength to admit mistakes, right? That ego strength to say, hey, I don't know everything. And understand how to balance that accountability with the compassion during this type of time. How do we make sure that we're still accomplishing the things we need to accomplish as a work group, as a family, while also understanding that this is a really hard time that we're dealing with. People are dealing with a plethora of different obstacles. So how to balance accountability and compassion and making sure that we're open and sharing with our group. Here's what we expect as a balance between the two, right? Being able to say, we know you guys are at home. If you need anything, reach out. If we're not able to accomplish a project on time, reach out and get support from the people around you. Think about it as an employee. I always love this. Own up to our accountability. Not, again, why we haven't done something, but what we're going to do differently, right? So just know that as a leader, as an employee, that you're a leader, you have to create the culture where you can say, hey, I haven't accomplished this, and here's what I'm going to do differently. And so finally, the last would be, think about it as like a family member, right? As a parent. Admitting that we don't know something is really powerful to our kids. Saying, oh, I don't know that answer. Maybe we sit down together and we find it out. We'll go read a book. We'll research it. But being able to admit we don't know is actually really empowering because our child understands that we don't have to know everything. And you shouldn't know everything as a parent. You shouldn't have all the answers, right? And so giving them the ability to understand that, hey, if you don't know, let's go find out. Or if you make a mistake, encourage your child to understand that, just own up to it, right? Here's what I did wrong. I'm sorry, and here's what I'm going to do differently next time. It's that simple. Working on how do you get them to own up to responsibility and then move forward from it. And so I have to tell you one little example that I really liked is we're working for a company and they were talking about accountability. And they said, how do we get our employees to be accountable? And I said, well, what do you do when you don't accomplish, a task from a meeting that you were supposed to before the next? And they said, well, we kind of just push it off as something else that needs to be done and don't really address it. And I said, well, there you go. That's your first problem. What we need to do is own up. And as we own up, the people that work around us, underneath us, our families will start to understand, oh, we don't have to make excuses. We can just say, I haven't accomplished this. Here's what I'm going to do next time. So our exercise here for you is to think about this. I actually want you to go about, and when you have something is a mistake, right? What I want you to practice is reflecting, journaling about what is your biggest learning from a mistake. Because that's how we have to see mistakes. We have to take ownership and say, hey, what is our biggest learning? And so that's what I want you to do. Next time you have a mistake, you don't get something done, I want you to write, what's your biggest learning? And it may be in this time of uncertainty and working from home, it may be, gosh, I really need to find a space that's just my space. Just a space, or I need to get in my routine. I need to have my cup of coffee. I need to go sit on the porch for 10 minutes before I start my day. That may be your biggest learning, and that will be very powerful in your growth. And the last one we're going to talk about today is give and receive support. And what's so interesting is I think that society kind of creates this myth that if we ask for support, we're kind of weak. It diminishes our accomplishments. But that's absolutely not true. Nobody can do anything without some sort of support. And so actually allowing someone to support you is really a gift to them. And by receiving support during these times, we're able to have someone who can help us through these situations, right? Help us through the fear, the anxiety, we call them self-limiting conversations, things that just get in the way of doing the things we want to do. And so we need support. So as a leader, oftentimes we're good at giving support, right? But how do we ask for support? How are we transparent and vulnerable that even in a time of uncertainty like this, we may need help, we may need support? And the best thing is people are always willing to give it in any capacity that they can find. So as an employee, right, we're human beings. Offering support is great, but receiving it, we have to actually remember that we might need technological support. We might need support of going to get groceries if we're an older generation, right? That's actually a really powerful thing that my Rotary has been doing, is actually asking for people to ask for support. To say, hey, I can't leave my house right now. Would somebody who can go help and get groceries for me? And you know what? Everyone is willing to help out because we understand that this is a goal as a community, as a team, as a family. And so being able to ask, give, and receive support is really powerful. So what I really want you to think about here is, how can you take this exercise, sit down, and work with, let's start with a family member or a really close colleague. And what I want you to do is I want you to start by writing down, what support can you give that person, right? That's very easy. We're good at that. Here's the support that I can give my spouse while they're working on the computer as well. But here's the hard part. What support do I need to receive from them? I want you to write that down. And then what you need to do is set a time with them, sit down, and really talk about and say, hey, during this really crazy time, for the next week, here's the support that I can give you. But here's what I really need from you as well. And really talk to them about that. Talk to your coworker about that, because what you might find is that they may have a different living situation than you do. And they may have children who are in school during the morning, and you might have children you're taking care of at that time, and somebody can help support you in the process of getting things accomplished. And so what I want to conclude here, because I want to respect our time, is that we really want more clarity, more answers, more understanding, more certainty when we're dealing in a time of fear, chaos, change, and uncertainty. Our brains desire. So I want you to go out, try out some of these exercises, actually take the time to sit down, write out these things, set a meeting with someone, sit down, open channels of communication, and be transparent and vulnerable with each other. This is a time where we need to have compassion, we need to be there and support people, and there's no better way to do that other than being transparent and vulnerable with people. And so what I want you guys to know to end here is that I'm going to be saving this and sharing this back with you, this video, so you can review it at a later time. You can go back to see the exercises. You can share with people around you. I want you to know that I appreciate you being here today. And next week, what our topic's going to be about is actually talking about the fear center of our brain that's actually activated during times of chaos and uncertainty like it is in this COVID-19. And we're really going to give you a little bit of the science, as well as a couple more tips on how do you really help shift people into a part of their brain where they can have compassion, problem solve, and build connection with others. And so I want to appreciate you being here again today for our weekly webinar, The Power of Transparency in a Time of Uncertainty. Thank you.